All right, in this last video here, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the how to. So we've been talking about the where and the how big, but some of you are probably still thinking, yeah, but how? So I'm going to try to put it all together for you with just a few little tips and tricks to help you have some success in drawing a person. Of course, it helps to have a person to look at. Yourself is always handy if you have a mirror. Or a picture of someone, but using a reference image is a really good idea for this process. So when it comes to hair, my biggest tip is pay attention to what the hair is doing. Don't just draw squiggly lines because a person has curly hair. Actually look at what the locks are doing, the chunks of information, chunks of hair are doing. Imagine that your pencil is a comb. So if a person has a part, you're not just drawing a line for that part, you're drawing the hair coming away from that, depending on how it's styled. If a person has bangs, let the hair come down past that hairline. But, pay attention. Imagine, like I said, that your pencil is the comb moving through the hair. Don't just scribble it in. Don't just think, oh, well, this is all hair and it doesn't matter which direction I use my pencil. That's not true. Your pencil represents those individual hairs. Also, let the hair take up space outside of the egg. Your hair has thickness to it. So depending on what it's doing, let it fill in that space. Now I don't want to cover up my notes here, but don't be confined to that original egg shape. Pay attention to what it's doing. If there's hair behind, that's going to show up back here in this space. Let it take up some space. Maybe even it's down in front. Maybe it overlaps the shoulder even, depending on the style. So let the hair take up space. That's a really important detail to making it look realistic. Really pay attention. That's kind of the most important thing I would say when trying to draw someone's hair, whether it's your own or someone else's, is pay attention to what that hair is doing. Of course, you're not going to draw every individual strand, but getting an overall impression of the texture is really valuable. And your hair is bigger than you think. Sometimes people tend to underestimate how much space their hair takes up. So let it be big. If you got big full hair, be glad for it and make it big. Okay? All right. Next, I want to talk about the eyes. And sometimes people talk about this in terms of a football shape, which isn't a bad idea, except that the eyes are not perfectly symmetrical. They tend to be slightly shaped different at the corners on the inside because that's where our tear duct is located. There's a little bit of extra happening there. So what I recommend you do, imagine the eyeball is there behind that socket, and then make sure that your eyelids wrap around that curve shape. And then as it kind of moves to the corners, it tends to get a little more pinched, so to speak. Okay, and let your eyes have lids. This is a mistake I see people make too often. Let the eye have a lid. And then within that space, we should be able to see an iris. The iris doesn't take up all of the space, but it does tend to be cut off by the eyelid at the top and at the bottom. So that's just some general tips there for you. It always looks a little weird when you just have one eye, so don't be creeped out. It's a work in progress. Sometimes you gotta fiddle with it for a while until you find something that you're happy with. Of course, one of the many challenges is symmetry. We are trying to draw something that looks symmetrical, meaning a mirror of itself. So you're going to work to try to accomplish that. But we do see some folds in the skin there around the eye. It really just wraps around the eye, the round part of the eye. And you kind of look funny white, so I like to give them even just a little bit of value, even if it's just a pencil drawing. Of course, your pupil is going to be the darkest part, regardless of what color your eye is. Don't get too worked up about eyelashes. Maybe just a little bit would be showing at the corners here. Definitely don't just draw them coming straight out of the eye. That is not going to be natural looking. Okay, looks kind of funny right now, but let's get a nose on it and start to shape up a little bit. The narrowest part of the nose is at between the eyes. It's progressively wider into kind of a triangular shape, but it does round out at the bottom. And even right here in the middle, sometimes visible that rounded part of the eye that is coming out at us. And just a sliver of the nostrils is often going to be visible. So, more often than not, we really can't see much happening in between the top and the bottom of the nose. It just sort of flattens out there. But the bone here that the eye rests in, the socket here, is just sort of continues right up into and becomes that ridge where our eyebrow is located. Really want to give those eyebrows kind of a natural shape to them. Don't want them to look like they're drawn on with a marker. And so oftentimes it's about all we see right there. All right, now let's talk about the mouth. We know that it's 2 eyes wide. We know it rests on this line here, but we really want to make sure we're drawing individually the lips in a way that makes sense. This bottom lip is just kind of a U shape. Tends to be thicker in the middle, and of the 2 lips, it tends to be the thicker of the 2. The top lip is a little bit of an M shape. It goes up and down and up and down, kind of a stretched out M shape. And of course, everyone's, whatever this is different. Some people it's more pronounced than others. Really want to just make sure we pay attention to that, because that's another feature that really kind of makes or breaks the recognizability, if that's a word. And then just let the corners really come together. If we don't do that, the mouth's going to end up looking real big. But just let them come, the lips come right together into these little points. And that's the general idea there on the mouth. Again, it's just a basic mouth. I don't actually have one in front of me. That's the basic parts. And the top lip tends to be in shadow. The bottom lip catches the light a little bit more because it's sticking up, kind of out at the light. The ears, I don't have a lot of room here, but I'll go ahead and talk about those. They're going to come up. They really attach to the side of the head. They do not stick out as far as people tend to think that they do. And we're just looking at the side of the ear. Really, we're not looking at it straight on. This is not a profile, so we're just going to see the suggestion of some information, maybe a little bit of shadow in there, but not as much of the ear is going to be as visible as people sometimes think. It's not as sticky outy as sometimes people think, to borrow a phrase. And also keep in mind that in many cases it's completely hidden. If a person's hair wraps over it and you can't see it, then lucky you. You don't have to draw it. Don't forget to put some clothing on your person, even if it's just a little impression of a shirt collar that's going to wrap down towards their collarbone there, so they don't look like they don't have any clothes on. All right, I hope that was helpful and you learned a couple of things along the way.